Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody feel?
Thank you.
My name is Ambrose Jr. I am chair and founder of Health Alliance Network, which is the largest community-based health advocacy group in the District of Columbia, based in Ward 7. I'm also a radio show host. I'm also a radio show host, so you know I hate a dead microphone. For WPFW Pacifica 89.3, I come on Mondays at 5 o'clock. I host a program called To the East, which focuses on the communities east of the river, Ward 7 and Ward 8, and all the issues that those communities are faced with. I am also lead organizer for a relatively new organization called Million Man Vote, whose goal is to register Black men to vote and to have discussions with Black men and boys and fathers about what should be included in an agenda for Black men. So those are the things that I do. And one of the many other community organizations, as some are here that know that I'm a part of. Brother Khan called me, actually he didn't call me, he texted me about two and a half weeks ago. And the text just said, "Can I use your picture? Can you send me a photograph?" I didn't know what the hell he was gonna use it for. But I found out later because he then sent me the flyer announcing this. He didn't say, "Ambrose, I need you to be part of the open mic to talk about Palestine and Black people." None of that. Just said, "Can I have your picture?" So I sent him my picture. It wasn't even my best picture, but he put it on the flyer anyway. But I am honored and glad, Brother Khan. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit late. I was coming from Marvin Gaye Park, passing out Narcan and talking about the opioid crisis. So it's coming from there. So
that's killing more people than the actual homicide rate in the nation's capital. Nobody else is talking about. So thank you for your work.
Oh, it's doing more than that. So I'll piggyback on Kimon. If you take the number of homicides and you double it, you still don't reach the number of people that have been killed by the opioid crisis. That's here in DC. I'm not talking about nationwide, I'm talking about right here in DC. And in fact, there have been more deaths from opioids than there have been from COVID. Did you all know that? Last year was the 5th straight year of record opioid overdoses. Last year, 2023, was the 5th straight year of record opioid overdoses. Last year, you saw the number of youth between 6 and 19 double from opioid overdoses. So that's the other work that I do. I kind of feel like I'm doing some stand-up, getting ready to do some stand-up. I've never done stand-up. But when, that's why I needed to sit down. I needed to be comfortable. So when we talk about this comparison, I had to just think it through in my mind and come from a basic level of how one group of people or race of people or ethnicity feels about another group of people or a race of people or an ethnicity. So I'm going to start with that comparison. Even now in this country, you will find on social media memes of and depictions of Black people shown as monkeys, shown as apes, shown as frogs. In other words, even now, in 2024, we are shown as less than human. Of course, there was a time when we were called legally 3/5 of a human being, which was used to justify slaughter. It was used to justify degradation. It was used to justify the creation of black codes, the creation of Jim Crow, the need to hang and to mutilate bodies, to rape women. 3/5 of a man, less than human, animals. And that's what Palestinians are called. Less than human, animals, by the Zionist fascists in Israel, using the same language. So we have to start with the language that they're using to depict the Palestinian people, which is the same language that has been used and is being used in this country to depict black people particularly, but people of color as well. Okay, so let's start with that. And that is used as a way to justify what they do. I might use my outside voice just in case, y'all, if it gets to that. Let me find my phone. So let's move from that, because we can all go over the atrocities that have been committed by whites against African Americans in this country, and we can go over the atrocities that have been committed since 1948 in Israel and Palestine. We can cover all of those, and I'm sure that Kimon and Reverend covered some of that as well. I'm going to come from a different perspective, and I've actually shared this on my radio show. So I'm sure that most of the people in this room have an understanding of what the definition of genocide is. Now, some people do, and some people don't. If you have a working definition right now, raise your hand if you know what genocide is. If you actually know the definition, raise your hand if you know. See, that shows me right there. I see a couple. Most people don't actually know the definition of genocide. So I'm going to read it to you. Genocide is the intentional destruction of a group of people in whole or in part based on their real or perceived membership in a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. The United Nations Genocide Convention defines genocide as any of the following 5 acts. Let me say that again. Any, not all of the following 5 acts, but any of the following 5 acts committed with the intent to destroy a group. Act number 1 is killing members of the group. Act number 2 is causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Act number 3, imposing living conditions intended to destroy the group. Act number 4, preventing births within the group. Act number 5, forcibly transferring children out of the group. Those are the 5 definitions of genocide, and any one of them could be considered genocide. So what does that mean for the black community in Washington, D.C., or the black community anywhere in America? Let's go to act number 3. Imposing living conditions intended to destroy the group. I can say around the corner from here, from where we are right now, there are conditions that are intended to destroy the group. We have been fighting against the issue of poverty for eons. Martin Luther King started a Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Barber is getting ready to do a Poor People's March at the end of July. But I'm going to share something with you about what Dr. King said when he started the Poor People's Campaign and what he wanted to do with the Poor People's Campaign. Because in a meeting, an organizing meeting of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, he outlined what he wanted to do when he wanted the Poor People's Campaign to assemble in Washington, D.C. He said he wanted the campaign to be as disruptive as a riot. You hear what I'm saying? He wanted the Poor People's Campaign to be as disruptive as a riot. Wasn't nothing peaceful. He said as disruptive as a riot without destroying property. I mean, he was coming here with the Poor People's Campaign to shut it down. Not to march, not to hold up signs, and then walk out of town at sundown, as disruptive as a riot without destroying property. Those are his words. Okay, why do I mention this? Dr. King was someone who promoted nonviolent civil disobedience. I will say to you that not only have we been bamboozled and tricked by corporate Democrats, we have also been bamboozled and tricked by some civil rights leaders as well, into believing that the only way that we can protest is by marching in the morning, holding up signs, and then marching out at night. There is nothing in the smorgasbord of activity that says anything about shutting anything down, anything about boycotting anything, anything about disrupting anything. That is not what our civil rights leaders of today are having us do. But the students in HBCUs, in white Catholic colleges, in Jewish colleges, are showing the world we don't go that way. We say BDS. Right now, we will occupy until you talk about BDS. Why are our civil rights leaders doing the same thing? Why are our congressional leaders doing the same thing? And we've got to understand the relationships within Congress to AIPAC, relationships in Congress to the Zionists, because they are there. Now, point number 2, I've talked to you about how the 5 points of genocide are in effect even today in black communities in this country. But I've also said, and I've said this on my radio show, that gentrification and ethnic cleansing are cousins from the same family. Why are they cousins from the same family? Because what is the result of ethnic cleansing? Number 1, it's genocide. We just talked about that. Number 2, it is the removal of a people from a land. That's what ethnic cleansing is. What is genocide? The difference between ethnic cleansing and genocide, just because it's done by bankers and real estate speculators, does not mean that it does not remove a people from a land. DC, with the last 2 years ago, was the number 1 gentrifying city in America. Number 1. And when you look at the communities of Washington, D.C., you see how they were systematically gentrified so that those communities completely changed over from one ethnicity to another ethnicity. They didn't even bother to try to make it a mixed ethnicity. They just completely removed, through processes that are economic, remove the people from a community. That is no different than using bombs and weapons of war to remove a people from a community. That's the other comparison. Gentrification and ethnic cleansing are cousins from the same family. That's the other thing that is common. The third thing that is common is that violence was used to be able to effectuate both. Now, we can go back to the historical record of Tulsa and Gainesville, Florida, and some of the other some of the other atrocities that existed. But we don't have to go that far back just to talk about how DC has moved communities from Foggy Bottom, from Georgetown. You still have an African American cemetery in Georgetown because African Americans lived in what is now known as Georgetown. Foggy Bottom, the same thing. There have been 3 periods of time in which whole communities of African Americans have been pushed out of those communities. 3. This is the 4th, what we're going through now. So you had so many different instances in which we talk about the Nakba, but the Nakba is not the only instance. The Nakba is ongoing. It's something that has been happening for a very long time. There's not like there's a Nakba and then it stopped. The Nakba has been ongoing. What they did now is just ratchet it up to the highest level that they could take it. Okay? And it's in your face genocide, it's in your face ethnic cleansing. So it's not as nuanced as it was back then. Well, I'm not gonna say the first one was nuanced because the first one was the same thing. So there are many ways that we can compare what has happened and what is happening to African Americans in this country and people of color in this country, and what has happened to Palestine, what is happening to Palestine and continues to happen in Palestine. I just wanted to give you some food for thought as we talk about these issues. Now, the last thing that I'll leave you with, in the fight, because at the end of my radio show, I always ask, if you're in the fight, stay in the fight, but if you're not in the fight, you gotta get in the fight. I always say that at the end of my program. And we have to do more to engage the people of color in this country to get in the fight against the exploitation of capitalism and Zionism. We have to do more. And we're not doing enough. We're doing something, but we're not doing it. We have to organize and organize and organize. And it's gonna be hard, but I think that it can be done. I think that the students can lead the way, just like SNCC led the way, just like the Panthers led the way. But the students can lead the way. So stay in the fight, keep on going, and it's open mic, so I'm not gonna hog it up, and someone else can come up and talk.
Is anyone else? Please come, and we are doing a raffle. Please come. We are doing a raffle. Please take part in it, and the proceeds will go to the UNRWA. So kindly take part if you can. My friend there is handling it, Dunya. Stand or step whatever.
Hello. I am super nervous. I wasn't planning to talk, but I heard a lot of voices in here that were really inspiring, and one of my heroes is in here today. I won't point her out, but yes. I wanted to talk about why Palestine, when it first hit me, what was going on. And I want to say that I was very unfortunately late to the game. Being a member, if anybody is a member of Gen Z, Gen Z in here, we are a group of individuals who grew up or were raised post 9/11, and our idea of the Middle East was so shaped by that. Not that it was being taught in school as a course necessarily, but it was the idea of what it meant to be Muslim and what it meant to be Arab and what it meant to be Middle Eastern. It was already painted for us. And so whenever October 7th happened, it was a wake-up call for a lot of people, including myself. And I want to emphasize a part of what previous speakers were talking about, what it means to be human. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately, what it means to be human and what that means to me. And I guess for the first time, I was impacted because I'm not sure if you guys are on social media so much, but there's a girl named Wizard_Basan1. And she came up on my For You page on TikTok, and this was probably maybe a couple of days after October 7th. And I saw a girl, Basan, and she had curly hair like me. She had the same cadence as me. We had similar interests, and then I realized I'm no different from her. And the only luxury that I have is being born on the other side of the world. And that's when it hit me, that the realization that these are people too. And just like me, and just like my communities have struggled, and I've advocated so long for Black liberation, I can't ignore the fact that I see the parallels between what's going on with the Black community and what's going on with Palestine. And then I wanted to share this because I didn't even introduce myself, I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Sabrina. I'm actually a biologist for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And I am a very STEM brain person, very science-driven person, and in my free time, I study astrophysics, which is super nerdy and super embarrassing to admit, but that's what I really like. And one of the fun facts I like to share about astrophysics, or quantum physics specifically, is this idea of the materials that make us up as humans, right? So when you think about it, we're all made up of atoms, but even on a smaller level, we're made up of these things called particles, quarks, leptons, muons. I don't know if that's ringing a bell for anybody. Probably sounds super nerdy right now. I won't expose myself any further. But the point is, these are the same stuff that make up stars when we look up in the night sky. And it's not a variation between races whenever we're looking at it on that scale, on that microscopic, itty-bitty particle scale. There's no difference between me and everybody else in this room. And then just another point that drove home for me that we're all the same, we're no different. And I wanted to share this as part of that point. I follow this astrophysicist named Neil Tyson. And in his book, Cosmic Queries, he talks about a specific portion of when humanity started to change. And we were talking about in the 60s, that was a pivotal time, especially for America, and when it comes to revolution and when it comes to changing the status quo and what we think it means to stand in solidarity with one another, whether it's here or whether it's in Vietnam or whether it's in Gaza. So in the 60s, he says, this is a quote directly from him, "Everyone was thinking about the future. It was the bloodiest decade in American soil since the Civil War 100 years earlier. Civil rights movements, campus unrest, 100 servicemen dying a week in a hot war in Southeast Asia. We're in the middle of the Cold War, 1968, the bloodiest year in that decade. 2 assassinations, and then there was Apollo 8. It was the first mission to ever leave Earth and go someplace other than orbit. It went to the moon, but it didn't land. But it went to the moon, December 1968. It orbited the moon, came back around the other side. They held up a camera, and Earth was rising over a lunar surface. To this day, that is the most widely recognized photo of Earth. I'm pretty sure you've seen it in many of screensavers, a picture of Earth, and it's like about halfway up, and you can see it almost like a horizon photo. We had never seen Earth pictured that way. It was in display as nature would have had you observe it. There was Earth with not color-coded countries. There was no Earth with oceans, lands, or clouds. there was an earth with oceans, land, and clouds. No one thought to think that maybe the atmosphere is part of the earth because there had been no photos with clouds depicted above the earth before them, surprisingly. The point is, over the next 4 years, 1969, 70, 71, 72, 73, the Environmental Protection Agency was founded. So was the Comprehensive Clean Air Act. And it was passed. Earth Day was founded. The organization Doctors Without Borders was funded. Where did they even get the phrase "without borders"? Where did that even come from? From that photograph. It was a cultural response to our presence in space. It affected commerce, it affected how we treated Earth, it affected our outlook, it affected thinking about the future as we never did before. My point in saying this is that we as humans, coming from my science brain, are stuck on this rock together. There's been no confirmed, whether you want to believe if it exists or not, there's been no confirmed species outside of Earth that we know of. And so I think it's about time that we band together. I think that the differences that we have that are based on arbitrary things like the color of our skin, our race, even our income level, which is also a social construct. A lot of these things are social constructs. These things don't matter in the grand scheme of things, because at the end of the day, we are a group of beings on a floating rock in space, traveling millions of light years, and the only thing we have is each other. And yeah, I guess that's my point, is I want to take a picture and kind of zoom out and see that we are not alone because we have each other, but we're all that we got. So we got to take care of each other while we're here. Thank you.
Nightingale of Peace, Medea Benjamin, can you please come and share your thoughts? I call her Nightingale of Peace. She's one of my, ideals. I really love Medea. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, I'm obviously not qualified to talk about the Black experience, but I do know that in the public opinion polls, Black Americans at the beginning of the, right after October 7th, there was a lot of, about over half that were favorable towards Israel. And this comes from a long connection between the African American community and the Jewish community through the civil rights movement. And it also comes from a long time of AIPAC-type groups cultivating the Black community. And we've seen how the leadership in the Black community has been encouraged to go to Israel on trips sponsored by the groups like AIPAC. They particularly cultivate young African Americans. They go to the high schools and the colleges, seek out the most valedictorians, the heads of student organizations, and offer them free trips to Israel so that they will come back and speak about Israel in a favorable light. And that has happened for a long time, for many years. And those of us who would go to protest at the AIPAC conferences that would happen every year, we'd see a lot of young people from the Black community. And when we talked to them, they would say exactly that. I went to Israel. I had this free trip. But we also know that the Black community tends to be the most anti-war community, the community that's most sympathetic to the plight of other people. And so the opinion in the Black community has changed significantly since October 7th. And so now you see a shift so that it is the majority of the black community that wants to see a ceasefire. It has been very unhappy with Biden for not calling for a ceasefire, till he did yesterday, Friday. That has been very active in the pro-Palestine efforts, whether it's on campuses or the 1,000 black preachers who signed a letter to Biden. Black churches have been sympathetic towards the Palestinians. So you see a big shift that has happened in these last 7 months. But what do you see among black leadership in places like Congress is something very different. You see them stuck in the AIPAC treadmill. First, if you look at the Senate, there are very few black senators. One of them is a Republican, Tim Scott, very pro-Israel. One of them is LaFonsa Butler, who took the place of Dianne Feinstein. She won't be there after the next election, very pro-Israel. You also have somebody that came out of the civil rights movement, I guess, Raphael Warnock, who was seen in the lead up to his campaign as somebody that was very much involved in the black struggle. And he has been extremely disappointing and pro-Zionist. And then you have, wait, there's one more. Anybody remember who the one more is? Cory Booker. Cory Booker. So Zionist, I mean more Zionist than the Jewish members of Congress. Super, super Zionist. So that's what you have on the Senate side. On the House side, you have the leadership. The leader of the Democrats on the House side is a black man, Hakeem Jeffries. He is extremely pro-Zionist. In fact, he's one of the ones that in the midst of this genocide, like a couple of days ago, signed a letter inviting Netanyahu to come to address a joint session of Congress. Shameful, absolutely shameful, disgusting what he has been doing for these last over 7 months. Then you see the leadership in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Democrats. The leader is a member of the Black Caucus. His name is Gregory Meeks, known as somebody very, very deep, steeped in the civil rights movement. He's very good on some issues like the Caribbean, some issues around Latin America. When it comes to Israel, he has been towing the line of AIPAC, towing the line of Biden. He has been terrible. And that's the leadership. But I think we have to recognize that there are some individuals in the Congress. And while Reverend, you said we don't have friends. I think we do have some friends, a couple of friends in the Congress. And one of them is one of the people who's been the best in all of this, and that is Cori Bush. And I think we have to recognize that she has really put herself out there in such a way that now she is on the target list of AIPAC. And they're really anxious to get her out of Congress. And one other black member of Congress who's been very, very good on this, and that is Jamal Bowman. Those are the two people that are really in the sights of AIPAC. Of course, Rashida Tlaib has been excellent on this, but I'm talking now about the black members of Congress. So some of the best ones are Cori Bush, are Jamal Bowman, Summer Lee, who luckily just won her primary, so she will be able to stay in Congress, but AIPAC was very much against her when she first ran. And so then we have, gradations of that as you go along. But for the most part, I would say the black members of Congress have been extremely disappointed, have been extremely pro-Zionist, have been taking lots and lots of AIPAC money. And I think while the black community has changed significantly, while we have a lot of black students in leadership positions who have been a part of these encampments and protests at the university, we have to recognize that we are not represented for the most part by people who have been elected in those positions. So that has to change. And that's part of what all of this movement is doing. And while many people are totally disgusted for good reason with the electoral system in this country, in the meantime, while we're trying to create a much more significant and deep change, let's call it a revolution, we also have to recognize that the people in Congress are the ones that do hold the purse strings. And while they just authorized another $17 billion to this genocidal regime, we do have a 10-year memorandum of understanding, thanks to President Obama, that sends $3.8 billion of our tax money to Israel every single year. So there are huge issues that we're going to have to face as we go forward. And a big problem of those is that we are not represented by the people who are supposed to represent us, that AIPAC has destroyed any semblance of democracy in our Congress, and that no matter what happens with, let's hope there is a ceasefire, we have a lot more work to do beyond that to have a system that has any resemblance towards a democracy, a system that reflects any resemblance of the needs and wants of the people of this country, particularly the Black community. Thank you.
We have so much talent and informed people in this room that I would be remiss if I don't ask a question. I hope that we at some point can have this discussion, but I have to be going in a few minutes, so I want to pose this, so excuse me for using my black card. And when I announced I was running for office, and the catalyst, obviously, for me to do that was because of this ongoing genocide. They're going to tell us it's not, don't believe your lying eyes. I've gotten, the only pushback I've gotten on not speaking about this issue were from Black people. My Jewish friends didn't say it. My white friends didn't say it. Black people said it. And coming out of the Black experience, unfortunately, trying to survive the 400-year institutional white supremacy, some people that love us, care about us, will actually give us bad advice, just so that we can survive and make ourselves more acceptable to a system that's been diametrically opposed to our existence since we've been here. I won't get into those stories, but I feel that DC has one of the largest bougie Black populations in the world. And that's primarily because everybody, that's DC talk, everybody, and their grandma works for the federal government in some shape, form, or fashion. And because of that reality, they're very hesitant to bite the hand that feeds them, even to be perceived. I'm not even saying that AIPAC is at their door, FBI is, they're not even going there. They're just so afraid of the possibility that they are self-censoring themselves, which I think is one of the most insidious aspects of this system to maintain itself. So I wanted to put that to the audience on how do we address that. Because I remember one thing, I was listening to, watching rather, a lecture from Noam Chomsky. Loving him definitely, he puts me to sleep. But I can't tell you nothing he said in that lecture. The jewel was from the Q&A, and that's what I'm trying to bring to you here. The jewel was in the Q&A. Some young man got up and asked Professor Chomsky, everything you're saying is valid, but what do you want us to do? We are risking our livelihood. We're risking our future in school. We're risking our job, future in jobs. And he says, let me stop you right there. When you censor yourself, you are doing the work of your enemies without them having to lift a finger. This is what we're dealing with. And that's what I want to put to the audience on how do we address that, because I think that's the elephant in the room. And I'll close with this. I had the opportunity to meet Lena Waithe. If y'all don't know who she is, she's a great, incredible writer, Queen and Slim, The Shy, all that good stuff. I met her right before the pandemic at Sundance Film Festival. 2 o'clock in the morning, she took time to speak to me, and I asked her for advice, and the advice that she gave me was that don't censor yourself. That's somebody else's job. I put that to the audience. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else please wants to come and share?
I want to hear
Please come.
somebody address that.
Please come, sir.
Okay.
I'm supposed to go up. Do I need to go up there?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, candidate. I came in late, so I don't know names, and I'm not from around here. I'm from North Carolina, so the cough.
North Kakalaki.
North Kakalaki.
So was Chuck Brown and somebody else went through.
And I think Reverend Barber might be from down there, and I was able to see him. So there's a lot of things talking that I feel in solidarity. My son just passed recently from an opioid overdose, and my family, I used to call from the Middle East until I went to the open mic at the Busboys, and it's not the Middle East, it's kind of the Middle North. So I'm Middle Northerner because humanity evolved from Ethiopia. So if we say the Middle East, we're already buying into the narrative that, oh, everything is around the United States, the Middle East, the Far East, but I'm Middle Northerner from where humanity started. And I think some of the complications that are communicated are manufactured because it is not complicated. And so anyway, so I'm talking, but I just wanted to speak to the candidates. I'm sorry I came in late. I don't know. The candidates' things about self-censoring and the terrorist label is something that I have really cringed at. You know, my family is Palestinian. My grandparents came 100 years ago and started a unfinished furniture store in Washington, D.C. in the 20s or 30s called Saw Furniture. And for those times, I really felt it important to not be one of the bad guys or associate, like, have so much virtue that nobody could ever question my dedication to the United States and being one of the good guys. But growing up in the 70s, I remember hearing a family member say, oh, when asked about the name, we're Jordanian. Jordanian? I've never heard that before. But my family is from a place called Ramallah, and it is in fact Palestinian. And only when I came into adulthood in the first Intifada did I start being proud and rebelling against that self-censorship of being a Jordanian, or like even being concerned that I might be associated with a terrorist, and because I'm a good guy, and I just want to put that out there, and I'm just tired of having to prove it to myself and others because of that self-censorship. So thank you for having me, and there you go.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please, Timothy, brother, you can want to.
Sit in Ambrose's chair. Timothy Tillman, African American, grew up Catholic all my life. My mother grew up in this part of town. She was baptized at St. Teresa of Avila around the corner in 1914. And this fits into a Catholic conversation. It's 1889. There was a National Black Catholic Congress formed, and the Congress said, we have issues that need to be addressed in the country. They said, We don't educate black people. Kind of went down Ambrose's genocide list. And 100 years later, another conversation, African American woman addressed the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Same conversation, the issues that were spoken of in 1889 were spoken of in 1989. None of those things have changed. And it's a matter of our decision to play inside of that. And if we're silent, so my daughter bought me this t-shirt that says, if you're silent, you're part of the opposition. And I'm always thinking about the next thing. I'm always thinking about the next thing to do. And I'm always willing to stay in that conversation. And I have to learn how to be uncomfortable. Because when I tell the truth to people, people get uncomfortable. People don't want to hear the truth because you face the truth, then the call is to do something different. And so I'm here. I'm taking it in. I'm gonna tell the people the truth as I understand that. I got a little bit of information here, and things that I think about. One is we do murder a lot of people.
Who's we?
Good question.
Yes, that's
Okay.
the link.
We are those who are silent in that conversation. So I'm a church person, and we hear a conversation about abortion. We abort lives in this part of the city every day. And I don't see a lot of church people running into the neighborhood and saying, I'm sorry that 3-year-old girl got shot on Hartford Street. Didn't know about the 17-year-old that got shot around the corner. Or the people that's appeared in the metro section, it says, 3 people shot in this part of the city. That happens every day. So weather and sports is going to come after that. Just go ahead and take a look at that. That's what you get on page 3. So you just have to figure out how to respond to that. I'm inside of that we. So I can't speak for everybody, but I can certainly speak for me. And all of us have to be engaged inside of that fight. So I'm just here trying to get smarter. Brother Cornmeal, and that was yesterday. Said, let's talk a little bit, come and listen. So I'm listening, and I'm just figuring out things that I can do. By profession, by vocation, I'm a community organizer. And people say, well, what do you do? I want to meet people in the bad neighborhoods that are good. And when I meet people in the bad neighborhoods that are good, I want to build a team of folks around them so we can change the face of the bad neighborhood. And if you live in a place where there's a lot of money, you might live your life this way. I don't know if I'm talking about anybody in the room, but if you're not doing anything, it doesn't matter. But people think that they're safe because they don't live in this part of the city. So if they're believers, they go to a worship house in their car. The car locks automatically when they drive away from their house. They hear something. They may express some enthusiasm in their place of worship, and then they drive back home. They push a button to open their gate, and the gate opens. They push another button to open their garage. The garage door opens. They drive their car in there, and then they push another button and their door opens, and they watch television or look at social media to engage the rest of the world. If that's where you live in a bad neighborhood because you don't know anybody. And people are going to talk about people that they don't know. And that's something we just have to get, that's something we just have to get out of. So there are folks in here that I don't know. I look at the world with two kinds of people. There are people that could be my friends, so I want to meet them, and there are people that are my friends. And, well, there's three kinds of people. There's people that I told the truth, and I want to see where they're going to stand. But I invite them to stand with me. I invite them to stand with people that just live in the neighborhood. So I'm just glad to be enlightened. And if I meet people that have all the answers, I've met the wrong people. So.
Just bring it to him.
I just want to say a word and finally respond to you, Medea. Because one thing from my perspective as a black person, nobody represents me on the hill. There may be folks that try to stand up and do some representation, but they don't represent me. Obama did not represent me. Though people in my church were very proud of Obama as a black person going to the White House. Fact is, we struggle in the black community with the issue of assimilation versus being autonomous. I'm gonna challenge folks, I never used the word African American. African American is a word of assimilation. So every politician you counter that's black are engaged in assimilation. So no, they won't stand up against the system because they're trying to ingratiate themselves to the system. That's their nature. When I came to Plymouth, which was the church I served for 30 years, we struggled with that issue. Me as a black man, and the majority of the congregation as African Americans, we had to challenge that issue of assimilation, where folks didn't want me to demonstrate. They didn't want me on a picket line, didn't want me going to jail. Why? That's not what African Americans do. That's what crazy black folks do. And what I was teaching was that there was a difference. And I found myself saying one day to folks that came at me about what I was doing and whether I was adequately representing the church. I had to remind them that everybody that had one of them good government jobs was because there was some crazy person that dared to kick open the door and not abide by the system. All the cops, right? All of that. Quick side story. Guy across the street from me growing up in Baltimore. Folks were so happy the Afro-American ran the story on the front page about the first Negro to get onto the canine force in Baltimore. About a month later, some white folks were robbing the bank, and he turned the dog loose. And the dog